we're just moved it a panelist. So
Okay, perfect.
Who else are we missing?
that's it.
That's it. Just, yeah. Hi, Gretchen.
Hello.
Great. Hey,
Okay, and Kevin, everyone's here that you needed.
see Kim, Andrea, Chuck is here. Everybody's here. Jory, Frank, Eric. Yeah, we're all set, ready to go.
Okay, great. All right. So I'd like to call the Thursday, December 17th, Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order, noting that it is the last meeting of 2020. So, for all our ups and downs, we have come to the end of 2020, at least in terms of board meetings. All right. I'm assuming everyone has reviewed the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I think I saw Ruth, and second was Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Lucille, are there any comments from the public? Lucille, you're on mute. There you
Yep,
are.
no, I know. I'm just checking. I knew I was on mute. I just want to give one final check.
Okay.
No, I don't have any
Okay.
public comments.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Thank you, Glenn. Is there a second? Thanks, Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That leads us to the reports. For board chair, our statement from the Board of Education went out to the Wilton community and staff, and it was been published in the Wilton Bulletin and Good Morning Wilton. So that will be our report for tonight. So thank you. Superintendent's report.
Great. So I just have one item. I wanted to call the board's attention to a letter I sent to a number of community organization leaders signed by both Lynn Vanderslice and me. And the letter is just announcing what we're referring to as Wilton Cares, which is an effort really broad-based across the community to reach out and very simply to check in on neighbors, to connect with people, and really to try to get at some of the social isolation that people have been experiencing during this pandemic. The concept emerged from a meeting that a group of us had, Kim, myself, Bob, as well as a number of community leaders with some folks from Silver Hill. And so Debbie, I think you got the letter in the original distribution. I sent it to the rest of the board just so you have it in your inboxes. You can take a look at it when you have a moment. But quickly, the purpose is really threefold. It's, one, just during this time to promote greater connectedness and support within the community. Two, to reduce social isolation among all segments of the population, not just the student population. And then three, to provide opportunities to develop and strengthen resiliency and coping skills for individuals and for families. So we'll be having a very brief organizational meeting next week, December 22nd at 11 o'clock, just to introduce folks to the idea, to share some more information, answer some questions, and then, we'll run it, through the year, and hopefully we can spread a little light and, encourage some greater connection across our community.
Yeah, Kevin, did that letter just come out? I haven't seen, I don't think I've seen it yet. Did it just hit our mailbox?
It did, yeah. So
Okay.
it's waiting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have, Debbie.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that's a wonderful effort. Committee reports.
Business ops, we met,
Thanks, Glenn.
and our primary focus was in discussion centered around an accounting procedure or process or methodology that we can adopt to help us ensure that the funding for our maintenance requirements and upgrades and upkeep is protected. Historically, the monies that we have annually set aside, and Jose and his crew and with Dr. Smith have really developed on a regular basis a maintenance upkeep program, a renovation program. And traditionally or historically, that has always been the first thing that goes. as our budgets get cut or reduced. And that's the easy thing to say, well, we'll put it off, we'll put it off. And we're trying to find a way that once the monies are adopted and approved, even though the job itself may be delayed, the monies stay intact and stay in place so that we can in fact go back at some point and continue and get the projects completed. We historically have had a pretty poor track record of maintenance and upkeep on our buildings. And we've got to find a way to get around that and ensure that the things that need to get done are done. So that was really the primary focus of our conversation at the ops meeting. We talked briefly about enrollment projections and what we expect the future to look like. We talked about the survey that was done on with parents who are homeschooling and how many of those people may come back, and still trying to get information back on the students that have gone to private schools and may perhaps return if things get back to normal. But all in all, it was a good meeting and good comments. And with our Board of Finance members on the committee, it helps to have them engaged in the process and our thought process. So we're trying to get this, the most important feature is trying to get the maintenance schedule locked in, money's allocated, money's confirmed and set aside. And so we're protected there and can get the jobs done that need to get done.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. It's certainly a good partnership to have Board of Finance members on the committee. And just to emphasize what you said and point out in terms of maintenance, we didn't use it in the sense of regular maintenance. It was the larger projects that we're talking about. So thank you. Teaching and learning, did that committee meet?
We did. We met last week. We talked about a few things. One of them was scheduling at Middlebrook, hoping to pilot a different schedule for grades 6 through 8 in the winter or the spring, ideally around February break. Troy was actually meeting with the committee the day that we met. So he was, I think, hoping to have more of a concrete plan by the 23rd to kind of share with teachers and community. We talked about some updates. The special education survey was postponed. They felt that there was a lot of building surveys going out and maybe it was just too much at this point. So they're going to do it in the new year. We talked about Wednesdays and the effectiveness of Wednesdays. I think building principals and admin was going to kind of talk about that. And the last thing we talked about was the pre-algebra 8 math course, which is a 6141. So it's going to come to the board. I'm not sure when, but eventually. It is the last phase in for the math at Middlebrook. So Trudy just kind of gave a rundown of it. That's it.
Sounds like a lot. So, all right, thanks for that. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about all of those topics as we progress. And policy committee.
Yes. So we met on Tuesday, and we went through the graduation requirements that updated the ones for 2021 and 2022. And so I believe we're going to be discussing that today. We are still working on the gifts and grants policy, which we will hopefully be bringing to the table next month. There's just some other details that we want to work out on that. And we're also still working on the 2 Title IX policies for sexual discrimination and sexual discrimination in the workplace. So we've still got a few things on our plate.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. Next are the review and discuss items. The first one being a learning model review, focusing on Genesis program and Community Steps program.
Great, thanks. I asked Andrea and her team just to share an update since we really, over the last several months, while we've referred to them and given brief updates, we really haven't spent time focusing on those 2 programs. So Andrea, go ahead, thanks.
Okay, well, I could go on for days about these 2 programs and what they've accomplished and what they've created during this very disruptive time, but you'll all be happy to know I won't do that. I'll start with Community Steps. As you know, Community Steps is our program that serves our students with complex needs aged 18 to 22. Typically, in a typical year, all of their programming is done within the community. So they spend time studying at Norwalk Community College or other post-secondary educational institutions. They spend time in workforce development, doing job shadowing programs and job placement programs. And then they do community participation all throughout the community of Wilton. Obviously, that has been slowed down tremendously in this time of COVID, since we cannot control the environments in which we would place the students. And so we went back to the drawing board, and I have to give credit to Melissa Barrett, Denise Arnakis, and Naomi Williams, who have done an extraordinary job creating vocational experiences that all take place within the Wilton Public Schools. So we have teams out at Miller Driscoll who are doing a whole array of workplace activities and work activities at Miller Driscoll. Our young adults have taken over the district mail function, and they are delivering mail all over the district and town hall. They have taken different internship opportunities with our custodial staff. They are distributing and maintaining the PPE. They are doing all kinds of things to assist our buildings across the district. They are working in different office functions. So we've really been able to do a great deal of work development and job development skills, albeit within the district and within the schools themselves. And our kids are having a good experience, and I think they're teaching everyone what they're able to do and how valuable they can be within the community. In the fall, when we were able to be outside, we did have internships at both Ambler Farm and Rising Star Farm. But now that those would have to be inside, we were unable to continue those, but hopefully we'll be back outside in the spring. Students are working hard when they're remote. When we have remote learning, they are working from home, doing activities of daily living. Our kids are doing video cooking classes and all kinds of other things. And our students are who are at Norwalk Community College are continuing to do so, albeit remotely. And they're learning how to handle remote learning at the college level and community college level with our staff of teachers and our group of job coaches, very dedicated folks who work with them, and we use a space over at Comstock. Honestly, these people, like everyone else in this moment, have had to pivot and create and recreate and solve problems daily, but they are doing an extraordinary job, and they're doing it with a tremendous amount of joy. The kids are having a great time. The teachers are having a great time, but they're working really, really hard. So I'm happy to answer questions about community steps. And if you don't have any, I'll move on to Genesis.
Are there questions or comments focused on community steps?
Yeah, Andrea, how many students are involved?
Right now, we have, I believe, we have 11 students at Community Steps.
Okay.
The numbers will be increasing by leaps over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
You remember we started very small.
Yeah.
And now that group of students is moving through the district, and they'll be joining us over. We got 4 joining us next year.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that both the public and the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen clearly understand that we have this obligation and this responsibility.
Yes.
And there's a cost associated with it above and beyond our K through 12 educational experience.
Yes.
I think you've been asked this before, but even though, of course, everything is shut down, are you doing behind the scenes work with the Prospector Theater that is moving?
There's a lot of communication with the new Prospector Theater as they begin to get up and running, as well as some other opportunities within the community. Yeah, the team is very much involved all around the community in making sure that our young people not only will have job experiences during community steps, but most importantly, that there will be jobs awaiting them when they graduate and they move on into the community with paid employment opportunities.
Great. Okay, how about Genesis then?
Okay, Genesis. Genesis continues to be a very creative and exciting place to learn. We currently have 17 students. We have a number of students in the pipeline to join us either in the spring or in the fall. We're working with families and parents and giving virtual tours and all kinds of things right now for kids who are interested. We've had, I believe.
Excuse me, were those students we're looking forward to be returning students who are currently outplaced, or what is their current status?
The students who are in the inquiry process right now?
Right, yes.
Yes, some of them are students who would be, if they so choose, returning.
Okay.
We've already had 2 more students return at the start of the year from outplacements
Great.
to Genesis, they chose to return
That's great.
to
That's
Genesis
good.
and are doing beautifully there.
That's great.
We have our seniors, all have been accepted to post-secondary educational institutions of their choice. They all got their top picks. So we're very excited about celebrating them as they finish out their senior year and get ready for college, and are working with them on the transition process. We have 2 students are competing right now in the New York Times Coming of Age Fine Arts and Essay Contest. We're awaiting the results and very excited. We were thrilled with their entries. We have a student who's been personally invited to the Fashion Institute of New York in a portfolio building process and degree program interview. So that's exciting for her. One of the things that Genesis staff has been doing since COVID began is they've really taken advantage of all of the community-based professionals who are working from home. And so there are authors who've been working with kids in their writing classes, who Zoom in with the kids and give them personal attention. They're reading their writing, they're giving them feedback. They're doing kind of writer's workshop kind of work with authors throughout the community, published authors. So it's been very exciting for the kids to see how an author thinks through their work and the revision process. That's been a big piece of the puzzle. At Genesis, they've had musicians, they've been talking to scientists. We've had alumni of Wilton High School who are now working in the science field in companies they've started, who are meeting with kids regularly over Zoom, talking about different environmental science projects and different things. So that's one of the things Genesis has really capitalized on at this time, are all the folks who are working from home and have some time to share with kids. So that's been an exciting piece, and the kids are really, really benefiting from that. We have a number of project-based learning units that are going on. They've been doing a unit in personal finance, and they've been doing a project on how media impacts text. And so they're working with that right now, and they're deeply involved in that. One of the things, on the land of, are we meeting the standards of the curriculum? We've given the MAP diagnostic tests. The kids are experiencing tremendous growth. So we're very excited about that. And then the last thing I will say about what's happening at Genesis, one of the things we talked about early when we built Genesis was we had kids who were really having trouble engaging in school, to the point where they would have trouble attending. We have an attendance rate well over 95%. Even when the kids aren't feeling well, they're logging into Zoom in class. So it's really, it's quite amazing what's happening. The kids are very, very invested in their learning, in their school, in their program, and they're helping to shape it and lead the way. And I can't say enough about the 4 staff members who have created this environment. Tom Koch, Brett Amaro, Eileen Wheeler, and Allison Harani. They are working tremendously hard with the kids to help build a program that I think all of us can be proud of. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have there too.
It sounds like those students are having experiences above and beyond what our normal students are. That's great. I mean, they're just, the staff there is phenomenal. There's no doubt about it. And the opportunities that they're creating for these students and these kids is just really fantastic. And I think Genesis has grown to be everything that we hoped it would be, and then perhaps and above, then some.
Yeah.
The parents who are looking at it and giving it consideration for bringing their kids back, I wish them all the best. I think once they see what we're doing, it will make the decision quite easy for them.
Andrea, can I just ask, what's the current enrollment number and what's the capacity number?
We have currently we have 17. I anticipate we'll be up above 20 before the start of the third quarter. That's usually where things start to bubble. So toward the end of January, we're going to see another jump in the numbers as we did last year. I would expect, we kind of built the program, the staffing for about 25 kids.
Okay.
Right now, the big change would be space. We're now at trackside. If we went much above 25 kids, I think we'd have to think about space.
Okay.
And then, staffing might be in increments at that point, not necessarily full 1.0 FTEs, but increments of perhaps the arts or perhaps health or PE, those kinds of things to free up the other staff to continue to do some other work with the larger numbers.
And in terms of space, are the grades like commingled so it operates as one program?
Yes, we operate as one program, but the kids get individualized attention based on their curricular needs.
But it's one, okay.
One program. Mm-hmm.
Andrea, do we have any middle school students in the program?
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And are you investigating space for perhaps next year?
We've been talking about it, and there are different ideas that get floated. COVID has kind of taken us off that for a little while, but
Sure.
I'm sure we're going to get back on it, as soon as things settle down a little bit.
All right, thank you. That sounds tremendous. All your predictions are coming true. So,
And more.
yeah.
I would have expected we wouldn't be here for 2 or 3 years. That we're where we are right now in the midst of a global pandemic is really a testament to the 4 staff members and the kids who started off, because they've really led the way. They really have led the way. They built this program as much as the teachers did. These kids built this program and they're very invested.
Andrea, I just wanted to say thank you for tapping into community resources. It's a great idea.
They've been great, and no one has said no. It really is something what's happening over there.
I hope when we'll go back to normal and people are commuting again, that they would have enjoyed it so much that they'll still find the time to do it.
I think they will.
Yeah, Andrea, that begs the question, is there a way, Jen, and it just triggered the thought in my mind, to let the community know what we're doing and those people who might have something to offer to reach out to us to see if they can be part of it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how the staff there is making these contacts with the authors and the engineers and the people we were talking about. But yeah, obviously
they've got leads.
Yeah.
These people have energy.
Yeah.
We can look into different ways. It's quite a resource, and there is such a wealth of folks in the community who have such interesting careers and have really translated their passions into a life and a career. And that's something I think our kids need to see more of. Yeah. That it's not just a job, that you can create a life based on what you're passionate about. Yeah. And that's been what's so exciting in this interaction between the kids and these people, is they're seeing people who are living a life based on their passions. It's really great.
Yeah, well, it'd be great if we can find a way of getting that out to a broader out to a broader audience. Maybe you get more people engaged in helping us with Genesis. I don't know how we do that or what, but it's something to certainly think about.
We'll keep working on it.
Okay, well done. Well done.
Yes, thank you. Kevin, any other learning model updates or anything that?
Nothing pressing. No, I really wanted to spend the balance with we could just hear a little bit about community steps in Genesis.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move to the budget assumptions. Even though the page says there's a recommended action, we're not going to vote on this tonight. We can discuss and then vote on the first meeting in January. So
Right.
Kevin, do you want to highlight anything for us on the document?
Couple of things, if you don't mind. So first, just for everybody's benefit, we typically start our budget process with the development of assumptions, and so this year, for some obvious reasons, that was more challenging. So we had working through the Business Operations Committee over the last month and a half or so, we've had a number of conversations around what these assumptions should look like. Originally, some maybe 8-10 weeks ago, we were talking about planning 2 sets of assumptions, kind of in the midst of a pandemic set of assumptions, and then what I'm referring to here is a pandemic recovery set of assumptions. And given the news of the vaccines, improved pharmaceuticals to respond to folks who contract COVID, there was plenty of optimism. And so the consensus at the Business Operations Committee was that we move forward with a single set of assumptions around this environment that we're calling, pandemic recovery. So within that, there is some fairly standard fare that we see annually in our assumptions. So things like honoring collective bargaining agreements, complying with federal state mandates, et cetera. There are some differences for this year that I want to call out right now. The first is around enrollment. If you recall from Ellen Essman's presentation several weeks ago, she built her model off of our October 1 enrollment numbers. And we know that we had, 160 some odd kids either opt for homeschooling or private school. And so my assumption is that some of those kids are going to return. So we sent a survey out to the homeschool families. A survey just went out to the students who are currently enrolled in private school. And what we've seen, we don't have complete responses yet from either sets, but we're anticipating we'll probably have about 30 of those. We've heard, I guess we should say, we know that about 30 of the students who are presently being homeschooled are planning on returning. We got just tonight 25 responses from the private school families. Of that number, 8 have indicated that they would be returning to us. So, so the assumption around enrollment is that it is going to be higher than Ellen's projections. We'll continue to refine that as more information comes in. So that's the first one that I would call out. The second one is just an understanding that one, within our supply budget, while we're not imagining we're going to need the same level of cleaning and disinfecting supplies that we utilize in this current year, there will be some increase. And so you'll see that when we get to the budget, you'll see that reflected. And then I think the other just major piece is, given that there are still some uncertainties, we will plan kind of a COVID contingency in case things do not evolve as optimistically as we're hoping here. And in that case, rather than bake some of these costs into the budget, what we would do is propose that we go to the Board of Finance for a supplemental appropriation to cover some of these extraordinary COVID costs, if in fact we confront some of them again in the next year. So that will be just part of our total budget presentation this year. And then just some other assumptions. We are expecting, again, it's we're feeling good about where we are with the vaccines and whatnot. So we are imagining that our schools will be running at full capacity again. Andre has been talking to us about some of the potential costs we may see in special education. This is a major concern around the country, that we may see either increased litigation costs and or increased costs for compensatory services. So we need to monitor those lines. I think the other piece that I would this is going to come up in the next item as well. But in terms of just laying out priorities, as you know, we're really, prioritizing mathematics instruction. We're prioritizing the potential for learning loss. And so within that, we're also prioritizing trying to expand some intervention services in a variety of ways. The other funding area that we're looking at is trying to move forward with the Middlebrook capital operating plan that we had put in front of the board a year ago. Jose Figueroa and I were talking about this earlier this week. And when he went back around to refresh his numbers, he just identified some additional concerns within that building. And so we talked about, we may need to go and approach this a different way. So he's going to reach out to Turner Construction and just, get a quote for what it would take to have a architectural engineering firm come through and really do a much closer look at that building. One of the concerns he identified in the last conversation we had was on the first floor in the back part of the Cheryl Lynn Peterson wing. Apparently, there's moisture creeps into the cement in the back section of that building. And so if we're going to pull up the current flooring and replace it with tiling, he said there needs to be an additional kind of, 2-ply sealant that has to be placed on the cement in order to create a barrier. So that's an additional significant cost that wasn't factored into the first round when we were looking at this a year or so ago. So we have to look at a number of things. So that's why on one of the documents I sent to you, I kind of just put an asterisk next to that because that's going to require some more conversation. I guess the last piece, and then I'll happy to take some questions here. In just thinking about pandemic recovery, we hired some additional classroom staff this year, thinking they, would be 1-year hires. I'll be proposing to the board that we hang on to those classroom staff for the purpose of trying to keep class sizes a little on the low end of our averages as a way to just, again, help the instructional response to pandemic recovery. So Debbie, I'll stop there and happy to take some questions on these.
Questions?
Sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Shan, did you have something?
Sorry, I thought you were going to talk.
No.
Kevin, we met as a tri-board. Board of Finance had mentioned possibly bonding things because rates were so low. Is that something we might bring to them to consider?
Everything on our list at the moment, and Anne can speak to this because she's done quite a bit of the investigation about what can be bonded and what can't be bonded. The items that we had weren't eligible for bonding, based on the advice Anne received from the bond counsel. And so at the moment, no, but kind of given, my remarks just a moment ago, I think we have to go back and look at this building a little more carefully based on some of the, just back I got from Jose earlier this week. And so we'll, I think to me, it's a standby. If other things emerge and that changes the equation around bonding, then I think we'd have to go back with a different package and make those inquiries again.
Okay.
And is there anything you would add?
No, you're right there, Kevin. It's basically when we go out to bonding, it's because we're doing new projects and not refurbishing or renovating. They're typically new. So that's why the criteria with whether it's in operating or whether it's borrowed capital.
And that would also include any of the capital work for Middlebrook?
Right, because Middlebrook would be replacing the lights, replacing the flooring, painting. They're more operational than they would be capital that you're doing a new building or a new wing.
Okay.
Well, in this, as Glenn summarized earlier, these are the major expenses that we're a little frustrated about in terms of it. If it does not qualify for capital, it seems too large and very different from a normal operating kind of budget. We get the supplies, we get the painting, but once you have to do elevators and major HVAC work, I think we're in a different territory. So that's why the Business Ops Committee needs to keep kind of grappling with how to deal with that. So I think those are discussions under, they're still evolving. Okay, so I think the board needs some time to just sort of contemplate all these assumptions. My observation is that many of them are COVID related, not in terms of continuing pandemic, but either recovering or compensating or changing its class sizes. And all of those could have major budget impacts. So anyway, obviously we'll be hearing more, but any board members that have questions or comments or want specifics, please email Kevin so we can talk about them again at our next meeting.
Yeah, if I may, Deborah, one of the things that comes to my mind is, Kevin, your comments about the instructional staff, the classroom staff that we brought on and maintained them. Some specifics, perhaps, how what we're talking about there, how many, et cetera, would be very important to understand and to know. I think it's probably not a bad idea because at this point it's hard to tell, I think, for us what the shortfalls in learning may be and where we're going to need to spend more time and invest more in catch up. But the magnitude of what it is you're talking about would be important in terms of the details, if you would.
Sure. And so, we brought on a kindergarten teacher earlier this year. And then more recently, when we moved Cider Mill back to full in-person 4 days a week, we added a 5th grade teacher. And those are the two that I would propose keeping at those levels.
Oh, it's only two. That's not a big deal. I'm fine. Okay, great. I didn't know that clears it quite a bit. So that's good. I'm fine with that.
No. We added the 0.8 world language and I think it was 1.0 health PE at Middlebrook to accommodate the schedule for this year. I don't see needing to hold on to those 2 staff members.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Well, just also, if we could get a sense when we're talking about compensatory services, how much of we think might wind up being like concentrated over the summer versus, needing to be throughout the entire, school year, kind of like what type of level of, intervention or services we're kind of, thinking about, like how big of the lift will be, and just also if we can get a sense of, where we are in assessing and assessments, from with the current student population, and if we're on track with those or whether, we're behind. So numbers might wind up creeping up, if we think numbers might be creeping up over time.
Yeah, when you say numbers, I think, in the conversations, Andrea can speak to this directly, but I don't think we really know yet. I don't think anyone does in terms of what the potential magnitude is or the need for additional compensatory services. In terms of assessment, I'm not sure. Are you talking about just the diagnostic assessment we've been doing?
Well, not even just the diagnostics assessment, but assessment for, whether services or, additional services beyond just, classroom instruction services.
Yeah, Andrea, do you want to address those questions?
This is something that we could probably talk about for 6 months and still not have good answers. But let me give you, right now, we're in the process with the State Department of Ed, federal guidance. We're really in the crafting of a framework around which to make these decisions about when compensatory education is required, and if so, how much and how do we know? And that's going to be a challenge. The question will become whether or not we are addressing compensatory education under the IDEA the way it was framed out in the IDEA, or whether the framework will be compensatory education in the midst of a global pandemic. And that's what the big question mark is. Likely what we're going to see and what we've begun to see in and around the state and the country is litigation is going to answer these questions. So there are 2 cases in Connecticut that have been decided around compensatory education that are somewhat illustrative, although not perfect yet. But we're still waiting for some guidance. We've engaged with the State Department. My colleagues and I have been in conference with the State Department to help understand what the framework the State Department will be using as they begin to get questions of compensatory education, questions of whether they be due process hearing requests, complaints to the State Department, or how we can frame it as a PPT decision for the teams to come together and make a decision about when a student needs compensatory education, and if so, what that might look like and how that might look. I anticipate that summer will be some of the time we can use to provide some compensatory education over and above ESY, which is the normal course of business. And so we will likely be using some of that time, but I expect that compensatory education will flow not only into next year, but likely the following, because it will have to spread out. Our kids are going to be in school full day, 5-day. There's not going to be a whole lot more time to add intensive services that are actually useful time, because kids are tired at the end of a very long, intense school day. So I don't know that adding more instruction late in the day or very early in the morning is going to always work out well. But we're going to work with families. We're going to work with the state. We're going to try to develop a framework and articulate and be transparent about what that framework is. But I also anticipate there will be some dispute resolution processes around this as well. So as the pandemic comes to a close, my office is going to get busy.
Okay, you can hear, Kevin, a lot of our questions have to do with sort of sense of scale. Are these tweaks or are these major impacts? Kind of some questions. Okay. And then during the budget process, just to remind everyone, we typically have a workshop on the various departments. And so as when you schedule the one for special services, can we make sure we allot enough time rather than sharing that afternoon or that sort of bit of time with any other department? I think it's going to need its own study.
We'll give Andrea her own day.
Yeah, or a week. We were asking for 6 months. So how about a budget workshop? Yes, more to come. And I guess the understanding is that this is not a Wilton only question. This is across the state and the nation. How to best serve the students who have been identified and what it means to catch up under the pandemic kind of situation. Okay. Any other board comments on the budget assumptions? And again, please send questions between now and next meeting so we can finalize these. All right, the next is a policy 6146 graduation requirements. This is review and discuss. Kevin or the policy committee, how do you want to handle that?
I'll take it. I'll keep it brief. This is this policy has been revised several times over the last number of years as the graduation requirements have been modified. And so the most recent changes reflect the change in the law. I think it was after the 2018 legislative session where the state had finally committed to beginning the new graduation requirements with the class of 2023. And so we're just updating the policy accordingly. So right now we have, basically 2 sets of graduation requirements. The older set for the graduating classes of 2021 and 2022. So our seniors and our juniors. And we'll continue to revise this as those classes phase out. And then so just very briefly, the old graduation requirements and for, the students in classes 2021 and 2022, they're required to earn 23.5 credits for the class 2023 and later, those students are required to earn 25 credits. Bob and his team had done analysis some time ago, and they learned most of our students graduate with more than 23 credits. So there really wasn't an issue with that. It was just an issue of organizing them. And then within the policy, you can see we've just laid out what the state requirements are. So within the humanities domain, students need to earn 9 credits over their time in high school. In the STEM domain, another 9. PE, health and wellness, and safety, they need to earn 2 credits over their time in high school. The world language is a new requirement, so that's beginning with the class of 2023. Students have to have a single credit. There's also a half credit for guidance and transition services, another credit for the merit-based diploma assessment, and then there are 2.5 credits that students can take as electives from any department they choose. So those are in place with the class of 2023 currently. They've been published in the program of studies. Council has been working on that. The current sophomores have been working on their portfolio projects they started last year when they entered high school through the flight program. And then beyond that, we've done just a little bit of revising of our performance requirements. And so we just really, these are just updating. So students have to, they have a variety of things that they can do in order to demonstrate proficiency in reading and writing and mathematics. So those details are explained here as well.
Okay, and this is the board's first reading. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, I have one, and it centers around the phys ed requirements, which has been a bone of contention for some time, I think, particularly with the students. And I see it changes dramatically from 2021 and 2022 to 2023. It kind of lessens the requirements. There's no chance of getting that thing changed for our, so what would be now our juniors or not, or are we locked into where we are? We have to be,
Yeah, I mean, Bob can speak to that, or Don. This is something we did look at, or Chuck, even you guys all participated in those conversations some time ago. But I think, we're, the way the credits are laid out for the class of 2023 and moving on is really what we have to do.
Okay. No, I think it addresses the issues that our students have had for some time about that. So it's great. I'm glad to see that change. I was just trying to get some relief for our current students, but that's, we're okay. We're good. All right. Thank you.
Any other comments? I just had a couple, I think, having a STEM category, I think that's the direction that we need to head. And so I'm glad that's getting finalized. The same thing with world language. I think that's a positive move. And I'm just so glad to see our American Sign Language program is taking off. So that's wonderful. So there's a lot of good news here. My only little concern is under the humanities, social studies credit, current and future remain at 3, which is fine. I'm a little disappointed, and this is just a philosophical comment, that the area studies requirement that was unique to Wilton under the older graduation requirements will not be continued moving forward. I just, just on my soapbox, I would think that in this day and age, it's more important than ever to understand different parts of the world. So I'm sort of disappointed to see that go by the wayside. I don't know if there's any reaction to that or comments, but I just had to say that.
Well, it won't be a fait accompli, Debbie, that they will wither away. That there's still something that will be offered and kids may vote to take, and I expect very often they might. And we agree that a global perspective is important. And one thing that's different, and this is not a panacea, but different from when the very forward-thinking team started the area studies courses, is that our freshman sequence is not Eurocentric anymore. It's very global. And the idea of the area studies historically was to balance that out. It's a heavy Eurocentric dose in the freshman year, but then later you get the global perspective. So the global perspective has become the new normal in the freshman year. Not totally at the expense of some of the exciting things kids can do in Asian studies or Latin American studies or Middle Eastern studies. And those are not leaving our catalog. They're just not going to be necessarily required as before. I suspect we're still going to see students signing up for those classes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so this will come back for approval next meeting. All right, so again, anybody who sees something else that they have questions about, please send them to Kevin. All right, leading on to possible action items. The first one is the universal screening for mental health. And this we were introduced to by Kim Zemo, not at our last meeting, but the one prior to that. So I don't know, Kevin, did you want Kim to sort of remind us and help us with the wording for a motion?
Kim, is there anything that you would choose to add?
No, not anything specific other than we're just looking at one more layer of making sure as early as possible that we can catch students that may be at risk for certain behaviors around social emotional. So.
Great. Yeah, and so I guess we'll keep it simple to your question, Debbie. We'll just ask the board for a motion to approve the use of a universal screening tool for mental health and social emotional learning.
Okay, then I will do that. Is there a motion?
I so move that we adopt the universal screening program as outlined by Kim at our prior meeting. There really, in this day and age, is nothing that's much more important than the emotional welfare of our students.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Gretchen, I think I saw Gretchen's hand first. Thank you, Gretchen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is approved. Thank you, Kim, for your leadership on that. The next item is, and again, this is possible action item, review and discuss the 21-22 Wilton Public School goals. And again, we saw these a little bit at our last meeting and then in a more detailed format this week. So if we're ready to approve them tonight, that's wonderful. But if not, we can also postpone this to early January. So why don't we just open it up to discussion? Kevin, I don't know if you want to take us through them, highlight something, however you'd like to arrange it.
Why don't I'll just walk through them very quickly since we didn't spend a whole lot of time in the last meeting. And, as a couple of introductory comments, first I would say many of the goals articulated are multi-year goals. And so we've been trying to make steady progress moving forward over a period of time. And you can see, we have goals in every department. And so some of these have funding implications, others don't. It's just, priorities, within the ongoing work that we've been engaged in for some time. So in the Human Resources Department, we've been working on improving our efforts for recruiting and hiring minority staff. Within that, one piece we're looking at is a program offered by CREC. It's a Minority Teaching Fellows Program. And that's something I got some information about a month or so ago. I've been reviewing it with Maria, and that's something that we'll continue to vet. But if we went forward with it, there would be some funding implications there. The other piece is a continuation of work. So Maria worked with a committee to develop, what we refer to as a portrait of the teacher, really, centered around some, big ideas in terms of the attributes that we want to see in our teaching staff. The next step in that is to develop a portrait of the leader. So that's work that, really doesn't have any funding requirements, but, will be, ongoing over the next year. Within financial services, as you know or may recall, we have been engaged for a number of years in this transition to this brand new software system, New World. The town is on it. We've been on it. Anne and Marianne have been steadily yeah, kind of moving us over and adopting the full suite of packages. So, that works there. Those funds are already in the budget. They've been in the budget for a couple of years. And so we just continue the process. I think the big ones that, would have some funding requirements fall under teaching and learning. So we continue to work on our curriculum revision. We've been revising units in language arts for years. Trudy put in front of the board a couple of years ago a plan to transition some of the mathematics units to realign, reorder. So typically, the work to do that takes place in the summertime. And so we always have curriculum days where we spend money. I think the high leverage item that we're looking at in terms of the mathematics achievement is really addressing the schedule at Middlebrook. So that's something you've heard Jory talk about in the past, and I expect we'll be getting an update probably the next meeting or so on where his team is with that. There may not be immediate funding implications there, but that would be high leverage just in terms of providing more time for mathematics at that school. I think, beyond that, we're also looking at providing some supplemental services. Chuck has been working on a proposal for this year that will come forward to the board, very soon, where we'll be proposing that we provide additional time outside the school day to support students. That's something, we anticipate that we would continue next year while we work to address some of our achievement gaps. Some of these others, I sent to you earlier today. Andrea has, laid out a range of priority areas within special services. But, again, one of our broad goals is to attack the achievement gap that exists between our special ed students and our non-special ed students. What else I think is important here? And then as I mentioned under the previous agenda item, that, facilities, that was a major funding area. And so, we were, very interested in beginning at Middlebrook, but we might need to do some further investigatory work that would get in the way of moving forward in a timeline in this coming budget year. So I think we have to get some more information on that. And so if that's the case, then we need to go back and talk about, what is it that we can do, or do we want to pick up some projects at the high school in the short term? So I think we've got a little more conversation there based on the last conversation I had with Jose earlier this week. Yeah, I guess I could name a few more of these, but you have the list.
Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, and I think I sent you just a suggestion that instead of the label 2021 to 22 district budget goals, it should just be goals. This is our strategic goals for next year, some of which will have budget implications larger than others. All right, but as sort of a program district plan of priorities for next year and initiatives, are there any comments or questions from board members?
I think what Kevin has laid out is a beginning, okay, and a good beginning. In the area of math, I think a lot of that remains to be seen, and the results of our math workshops will dictate a lot of what happens there, Kevin, and what we expect, or what we, the priorities we set coming out of the workshop, where we're headed and the things we need to do. Hopefully the workshop will come up and we'll develop a game plan there. And some of the things you've talked about, the scheduling in Middlebrook and all, is probably part and parcel of that. So that's the only comment I would have around what you've detailed so far. I guess I'm not sure where it gets addressed or where how we deal with it, but Andrea's comment earlier about the compensatory education and how we close identified learning gaps. The issue being that there are only 8 hours in a day or 24 hours in a day. We can't manufacture and create 26-hour days or 28-hour days, which give us time to catch up or time to get back what we lost. And I think that's going to be a real issue for us going forward. I don't know that we understand clearly or have a handle clearly on the magnitude of that, or how significant, or maybe it is significant, the lag or the lapse has been over this past year with our students. And I think we need to be prepared to figure out how we deal with that, or what we can do with it. As I say, we're limited. There are only a certain number of hours in a day, and we may get either pleasantly surprised or not as we get back to a routine to find out where our students are. And that's a concern of mine, and I'm not sure how we don't know yet. That's something that we'll learn as we go forward.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Good points. Other comments about these specifics for next year as we plan the program, and then what will follow will be the budget?
I think that it would also kind of be helpful when we're kind of looking under the teaching and learning areas and that strengthening the curriculum. If we could just get like a sense of projects that have started in the past, kind of like almost just like a very kind of basic grid of this is what was meant to happen over time, what has been completed, what still needs to be completed, like where we are, and you know where the evaluation within the system is, just so we can kind of just get a larger sense of what the overall program was. And then when we're looking at, you know, what's happened along the road of this year, where the kinks might be, and where, you know, as we're making, you know, budget decisions and figuring out where resources are more or less needed, it would just kind of help me, you know, in general, if I had like a bigger.
Sure. So Ruth, we typically produce the curriculum revision projects that occur over a summer. I think, Chuck, we may have provided that report earlier this year, but what might be helpful is if I just gather the last, you know, 3 or 4 years worth, and we can flag for you within those, so you can just see the continuum in both ELA and mathematics, unless there's other areas you want to
Yeah,
more
I'm
specific.
looking, it doesn't have to be fancy, just kind of like really crude, like this was like, you know, Trudy's proposal from 5 years ago, and this is, you know, where we stand and where we still need to go, and, you know, what has worked, what, you know, where we are and where we're not, and, you know, just
Sure.
fair, yeah.
Fairly easy. Chuck and I'll pick that up tomorrow. I think we can put it together pretty simply.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of those documents exist, and this year and last spring got truncated just because of everything else going on.
Yeah.
The action plans are kind of well laid out, and the summer curriculum is summarized and all of that. And so we have that from prior years. This year and last spring is just a little sketchier for obvious reasons. But yeah. All right, but good points. But
even if it's just like a 1 page, like at our fingertips, you know, just a very kind of just,
fair enough.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have comments? Okay, this is on as an action item. Again, I don't want to push it, but is there a motion to approve the 21-22 district goals? Or not?
yeah, I'll move to approve, because I think we need to have, you know, a roadmap.
Oh, yeah, it's just a.
With the caveats that we've talked about, but we need to have a roadmap. We need to have some sense now of where we're headed and what we want to accomplish. So yes, I move the approval.
We've got the draft of a roadmap, but especially based on what Ruth was asking for, if we can just kind of wait so that we can review this, I just feel like, I know we've had this, but
yeah,
it would feel more comfortable if we could do it at the next meeting.
All right, that's all it takes for me is 1 or 2 board members to just want a little bit more time. That's absolutely fine.
I'm fine with that also. No problem at all. Okay.
Okay, so we'll put this on for the first meeting in January. And then again, if there are follow-up questions, et cetera, please I'll let Kevin know so he can refine this document and then get it out as early as possible with all the revisions. So we can definitely bring this to a close on January 7th. Is that our next meeting? I'm sorry if I'm, yes, it is. I got the right date. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll just hold that over until January 7th. That's perfect. All right, so future business and information items, January 7th is our next meeting. And then January 21st is the superintendent's budget presentation. And then after that, Kevin, you'll let us know the workshop schedule for budget, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know we need to coordinate with the Board of Finance, just the invites, because we always invite them. And then I know they have their own schedule that they're working on. So we need to probably reach out to the Board of Finance and try to get those dates on some sort of joint calendar.
Yeah, it's usually we do a joint meeting with them in somewhere mid-February.
Okay, great. Comments from the public. Lucille, are there comments from the public at this point? Lucille, you're on mute.
No, there are no comments from the public. I'm sorry, it was not a comment from the public.
Okay, that's okay. All right, then we're through the agenda and the meeting is therefore adjourned at 8:05 and wish everyone a restful and happy, if quiet, holiday season. And thank you all for your work and hanging in there. And we'll meet as another big group in the new year. So
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. Thank you
Happy
so
holidays.
much.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy New Year
Here.
to all. We'll get through it. No doubt about it.
Always do. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.